Rurouni Kenshin Season 2, Episode 18. I'll be honest, with this episode, I did definitely feel the padding of time. As I was praising the last episode for adding in a bunch of new anime-only content that I think really expanded upon the story and showed us little scenes and elements of things that we had heard about before, like Saito interrogating one of Shishio's officers, or where the hell Sanosuke was when Kenshin showed up at the police station. There's a bunch of little things that they put in the last episode that I thought were very fun and added a little bit more context to things that we just never saw before. Did we necessarily need to see those things? I mean, no, because the manga and the 90s anime didn't show them and the story worked fine, but it was really fun to be able to see a little bit more context, a little bit more scenes of stuff that was previously mentioned. However, in this episode, I do think the padding definitely showed, or at least I felt it more, and I wasn't quite as engaged with the extra scenes as I was in the last episode. And maybe part of that is because I know what we're leading towards, you know, with Kenshin and Saito and Sanosuke making their way to the boat that Shishio is at. But at the same time, I did feel like there were a lot of moments in this episode that just left me questioning what they were actually doing with it, and I'll get into more detail of that. Now, that's not to say that I hated this episode. I thought it was fine, and as a Kenshin fan, I enjoyed it just okay, but there are some things that just leave me wondering why. But yes, with our main team up here, we have Kenshin, Saito, and Sanosuke that are heading by carriage in order to get to the docks to hopefully, if they are correct in their assumption, find Shishio there with some kind of battleship and stop him from setting sail and going off to Tokyo. And as we saw at the end of the episode, yes, Shishio is there with some kind of battleship. And of course, I love all the moments with Sanosuke on top of the carriage, just being super gung-ho about everything, and Saito periodically stabbing up through the top of the carriage because he's ruining his train of thought. The banter and the interaction between those two characters is pretty much one of my favorite things of the entire series. And then Kenshin writing his letter to the Oniwaban to let them know about the Kyoto fires that are going to take place, because that is still happening. So Shishio's plan to burn Kyoto to the ground, although it is a massive distraction away from what Shishio himself is doing, it's still an extremely dire situation that is about to happen. And so with all the police officer units that are all around Kyoto, that still might not be enough. And so sending the letter to Misao, Kaoru, Yahiko, all of those characters, that's a great addition. And they did show some of those scenes in the 90s anime, but it was expanded on a little bit further. The one that makes me very curious is that we have some of the other Oniwaban members, the two women in the group. So I always forget these characters' names because they're such minor characters, so I apologize. But living in the same place as Misao is, there are 4 other members of the Oniwaban. There's 2 guys and 2 women, and they do end up, you know, being part of the big battle that happens, but I can never remember those characters' names because they don't really have a lot of screen time in the manga or in the anime. But regardless, they are surveying the area at night, and the 2 ninja women follow one of Shishio's henchmen up into the wilderness, and they actually see or encounter a number of the 10 swords as well as Shishio's henchmen. So this is something that does not happen in the manga or original anime, so I don't exactly know where they're going to go with this thread of story. I don't know if they're going to say that they just escaped and so now they have intel, you know, from their recon mission or whatever, or if they're going to actually start a battle early. I don't know. So this part was a little bit surprising to me because they're up in the woods and they turn around and they encounter the most dim-witted member, but a member nonetheless, of Owambo. And Owambo is incredibly strong. And this is like a minor spoiler, so I just want to say this because it brings more context to this scene. It's super minor. It's a very, very minor spoiler. But essentially, when the big battle does break out, those 2 characters, those 2 ninjas, they are involved with fighting Iwambo. So eventually they will fight Iwambo, but all of a sudden, you know, now that they're here encountering him a little bit early, I'm wondering if that fight is going to be moved up, or if this is going to be like a preliminary, like, little back and forth, and then they'll have more, I guess, incentive to fight him later on. I don't really know, but that's something that kind of surprised me a little bit. The other thing that I don't really know what they're doing, so I haven't really mentioned this in the other videos because, again, it's a very minor character in the original story, so I just didn't feel the need to bring him up, but the other police officer that Saito has been interacting with the most since we've cut back to them. He looks completely different in the manga and the original anime. He was originally like a short, heavy-set police officer character, and he doesn't really do much. He's pretty much just there to say, hey, Saito, I'm glad that you arrived. We have one of Shishio's 10 swords locked up, and that's when he goes to visit Cho. And he doesn't really have much to do beyond that. Now, all of a sudden, in this version of Kenshin, they've completely redesigned the character to make him taller, more handsome, whatever the case may be. And now they're actually giving him development and scenes. And so I have no idea where this is going. And I don't want to count these scenes out because they might ultimately end up evolving into something really cool. But at the moment, just because it's so different than what I'm used to, I don't really understand the added scenes with this character yet, as well as the little boy with the sword that was arrested. This also happened in the last episode, but once again, I didn't mention it in the review because to me it just felt kind of like a joke. Like, you're not supposed to have swords on the street. The police officer sees Kenshin. He has a sword. He's like, what are you doing? You know, you got to go to the police station. And Kenshin's like, well, I was going to go there anyways. And then he turns around, there's a little boy with a sword, and the police officer is like, what the fuck? Like, to me, I thought that was a joke saying, like, you never see anybody walking around with swords, but in the manner of a minute, this police officer saw 2 people in a row. And to me, that was just like a little joke, a little gag. But now they've expanded that further, and they've brought that kid to the police station here to interact with the originally heavyset character. And the kid mentions that he brought his sword here, that he wants to help, you know, with everything going on, that he wants to fight, and the officer tells him not to. He tells him just to observe instead, in an attempt to, you know, probably protect his innocence and protect him from the overly ambitious nature of, you know, young people, especially in that era, wanting to go into battle and you know, be able to protect those around them, but at the same time not really understanding the repercussions of what it means to be in those kinds of battles or what it does to you physically and psychologically. And now this older officer has a chance to do something to help the next generation and have them not, you know, fall into the same madness that all the adults are dealing with now. So that's kind of like the most that I gather from this scene so far. I could be wrong, and there could be more to this, and they might develop both these characters further, but just from my knowledge of, you know, watching Kenshin 20 years ago, neither of these characters do anything. Like, the police officer character is completely different and only has a little bit of dialogue, and this little kid is not in it at all. So I don't know where these characters came from and what they're doing with them, but nonetheless, it was a focus of this episode. Now, the only other thing really to talk about was the introduction of the ship that Shishio has. And in the 90s anime, it was translated in the dub that, you know, I watched the dub, so sue me. It was called the Purgatory. But since this episode is only out in Japanese so far with subtitles, they are calling it the Rengoku, but I do believe that is the Japanese word for purgatory. So just like 10 swords and Jupungatana, I guess we can interchange them. Rengoku, purgatory, whatever you want to call the ship, I don't really care. The point is, it's a massive battleship that is being disguised as something that looks a little bit rinkier, dinkier, kind of shittier in many ways, but underneath is all the capabilities that it needs to have in order to enact this plan. And it's a little bit symbolic of Shishio himself, because on the outside he's burned and scarred, he looks weak, but on the inside he's extremely powerful, both physically and mentally, with his endurance and his will to survive, and his idea of the strongest, the survival of the fittest, the strong will live, the weak will die, the strong will feed off the weak, and that the weak should not be in charge, and which is the whole reason why he's doing everything that he's doing, is because he just doesn't believe that they have the capacity to lead the country in the way that it needs to be led, and so he's stepping up to the plate. And in order to do that, well, you need a giant battleship. So yeah, we are leading to this confrontation with Kenshin, Saito, and Sanosuke showing up to the ship, but that's kind of where we were in the last episode, leading towards that confrontation, and they still haven't even gotten there yet. So I don't know, but in the next episode, it looks like shit will finally start to go down, that the fires will start, the Oniwaban will enact their plan to try to stop this from happening in a variety of different locations. And also don't forget that the 10 swords are actually there as well, and they will be part of this. So there's all of that catastrophe to go down. I don't know what's going to happen with the 2 ninja women meeting Owambo in the woods. That's just a dude you don't want to meet in the woods, just in general. So that's there. And then if they're doing something with this police officer and young boy character, I don't know if they are, but those are on the table as well, chess pieces on the board. But the crux of this, the main part of this, is the purgatory and what Shishio is doing. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. As always, we have 5 episodes of Kenshin left this season, so let's see where they ended at. Once again, if they get to the part where I said that I think they're going to put the cliffhanger, I will tell you, but I won't say anything before then just to not spoil it for Kenshin fans watching for the first time. But I have an idea of where they're going to, and they are going to probably have to drag a few more things out to get there, but we'll see how it goes. Thanks as always for watching, guys. Thanks a bunch to everybody that sent in the super thanks on these videos, man. You make it worthwhile, because otherwise, you know, the videos just don't do well. And you guys can click off the video now. It's fine. I'm just going to rant for like the last 30 seconds. But the channel in general is not doing too hot. It's turning out to be not just the Kenshin videos, but almost every video I put out is having a hard time reaching even over 1,000 views. And things are just kind of getting tricky. So if anybody would like to join the Patreon or become a channel member, even $1 a month is super, super helpful. Or just the super thanks help. Or at the very least, likes, comments, shares, all that stuff helps too. So I appreciate you guys so much, and I will continue to endure, and I'll see you guys in the next Kenshin episode review. So take care, everyone.